Christians, I hope all is going well tonight, especially since today is Christmas, or last night was Christmas, I forget. But anyway, I trust you had an enjoyable holiday and that you will still be inclined to absorb the Lord's truth in spite of the holiday season, which I'm sure most of you will. Today, I'm going to continue in our study, going through the book of Job, and we are over halfway through the 9th chapter of Job's response to his friend Bildad. And so I hope that there will be much in here that you can see and discern that will be as enriching to your own soul as it has been to mine in going through it myself. So stick around for a while and let's talk about Job chapter 9 and his words in this chapter. Now, first, we left off in Job 9 verses 22 through 24. And by way of summary, I just want to kind of go back so we can set the stage for the context of Job's discussion and what he has to say. In verse 22 of Job 9, Job says this: "This is one thing, therefore I said it. God destroys the perfect and the wicked. If the scourge slay suddenly, he will laugh at the trial of the innocent. The earth is given into the hand of the wicked, and he covers the faces of judges thereof. If not, where and who is he?" Now in these words, we see Job expressing dark perplexities regarding his condition before God. Remember, he has no idea why any of this suffering that he's going through, why it's happening. He knows it's happening. He's sensible to that, but he doesn't understand if there's some cause that he is unaware of. And in fact, the reality of the matter is that he is unaware of the cause for this happening. And so Job is perplexed. And even in verse 23, he says, if the scourge slay suddenly, that God will laugh at the trial of the innocent, and that the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. And he says that God covers the faces of the judges. He blinds the judges. And so he speaks about earth in a disordered, chaotic state. And in this disorder and chaos, it is because the judges are also blinded and the wicked are prospering. Not unlike what we ought to be seeing in our own day, especially here in the 21st century America. Now, Job is not saying that God is doing anything wrong or that there's something wrong with God and how he's handling things in his providence. Job just can't reconcile the realities that are obviously upon him. He doesn't know how to make sense of it. And this is what needs to be unraveled for him. And he doesn't know how. He doesn't know how to formulate a conclusion in the matter of his affliction that he is currently plagued with. So God's mystery in his providence remains a mystery as far as Job can tell. And as a result, Job is overwhelmed. He's overwhelmed. He doesn't have a sense of what's happening, although he wants to get one. So we're going to pick up from here and verse 25 and 26. Verse 25 and 26 is where we will pick up. And so what we see here, Job says, now my days are swifter than a post. They flee away, meaning his days. They flee away. They see no good. They are passed away as swift ships, as the eagle that hastes away to the prey. So this is where we're going to begin. Before I do, even though I have a very, 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 very small panel, I'm going to ask for your early input into our discussion tonight on Job and where we are in chapter 9. Brother Jeffrey, your thoughts, opening remarks.
Well, good evening, brother, and good evening, everyone. Initial thoughts are just echoing, Jonathan, a little bit of what you said. Job is just totally overwhelmed here, and his days are swifter than a runner. They fly away without a glimpse of joy. I mean, this man is totally devoid of anything that closely resembles, joy or peace or happiness or contentment. All of those things have been temporarily removed, for lack of a better word, or lost, whatever, from Job. And he is wondering, and still, he says, I will forget my complaint. I will change my expression and smile. He's trying to have the best attitude that he can about this, or at least that's the way I read verse 27.
Right.
So at least he's trying, in spite of his friends who are there to, quote, help him, and they're not. He is trying to keep some sort of a proper attitude about this. So He is doing a good thing to the best of his effort.
Right, absolutely. Brother Canaan, what are your thoughts, brother? And happy holidays and good evening.
Good evening. I hope everybody is well. I wanted to hone in just for a moment on Job 9:25. Is that okay, or are we there yet? Are we to that section?
No, go for it. We're getting started to it, so go for it.
Okay. So I was thinking of how it talks about the heavenly prize being like a marathon, right? And so I was just curious in what relationship this verse had when it says, now my days are swifter than a runner. They flee away. They see no good. And so I looked up the cross references for that. And of course, it goes to one that I've been visiting both mentally and with some things that I post periodically. But Psalms 39:5, it says, behold, you have made my days like hand widths, and my lifetime as nothing in your sight. Certainly all mankind standing is a mere breath, Selah.
Right.
And so, again, he's alluding to the short amount of time that we have.
Right.
And how it flies by, because when we're looking at a runner, it's talking about something swift, something quick, or a post in your translation. It's very fast. And when we compare that to a marathon, which is steady and takes time, and it doesn't happen quickly, us being sanctified, and being with the Lord again. Mm-hmm. And so it's something to weigh against my mind, my walk, my life, is that though these days are short, how are we using them? Are we using them wisely with discernment and with patience and compassion and really cultivating the fruits of the Spirit? Or are we not utilizing the time that we have, the short amount of time, the breath or the vapor that we have on this earth for nothing, for our own desires and our own passions? So that's just something I'm thinking about after hearing that verse as well.
Right. Well, you're right. I mean, he is definitely speaking to the brevity of life. That's exactly what he's speaking to, the brevity of life. And certainly, as you say, brother, that there needs to be a quality of this life that we need to pay attention to, considering the fact that it is such a brief existence, the way that we have it today. Very brief. And when he talks about his days being swifter than a messenger or a post, he's talking about a messenger. That's what he's talking about, like a mailman or a postman. But back then, you got to look at the times. And what he's saying is that, as quick as a post delivers a message, that's as that's as fast as your life is. It comes and it goes. And he says, in these days, he says they flee away, and he says they see no good. And see, what I love about this on the part of Job is that Job recognizes, one, that the brevity of life, he's aware of it, that it is brief. And he realizes that there's a certain quality that needs to be pursued for it to have any significance or any real value. And that's a value that he wants. And it's a value that all of us should seek after and should want to be able to have in this life, because it is so brief. And this should be a lesson to all of us. This should be a lesson to all of us. We need to look at our life like real estate. There's a statement that people always talk about in real estate. People will say, well, buy yourself property, buy yourself land or whatever, because there's only so much of it. And the idea of that is that if you get some of that, then you have something of value. You have something of value by having a piece of the earth's landscape. But when it comes to us being Christians, we need to look at our life as real estate, not the land that we stand on top of, not the dust of the earth, not even our own physical bodies. But what we need to focus on is what our life is as believers. How are we to conduct ourselves? What are we going to do? Or how are we making use of our time as believers while we're here? Because Job understands that his days are swifter than a post, and they flee away. And he recognizes that, he says that, and they see no good. Job understands that our lives, they are not only short, but there's not much good comes out of it. Now, what he's not saying that we can't do or exhibit or handle or see or experience good things. But what he is acknowledging is that whatever that good that comes of us being believers and Christians and servants, it has nothing to do with anything pertaining to ourselves, but it is all pertaining to God. He is the source of it from beginning to end. When the parable of the soils was spoken about by Christ, it is God who makes sure, or who cultivates the ground whereby seed can take root in the good ground and spring forth into fruit, some 30, some 60, and some 100-fold. But it is God who prepares not only the seed, but he also prepares the ground that prepares and that produces the fruit. So he goes on, he says that they are passed away as swift ships. Our life, short. He's reiterating another layer of metaphorical language, speaking about how short the life is. It passes away like a swift ship. In today's lingo, it's like a speedboat that passes by. Like a speedboat just passes by. It is here in 1 second and gone in the next. And this is what he's speaking about. And then he talks about the eagle that hastes to swoop on its prey. He says the speed with which that happens is indicative, or is a characterization of the shortness and the brevity of our life. Job's misery makes time seem both fleeting and also relentless. And he is expressing himself in such a way where he acknowledges that in this life, there is no hope of recovery that he is seeking that comes from this world. So what is he saying? That if there is some recovery, if there is some modicum of respite, if there is some quiet repose that can calm his mind and calm his fears, he understands that it is not going to come from this world. He knows that. We should know this. It is not. Whatever comfort, whatever rest that we can gain in the midst of trials, dark seasons of affliction and persecution in our life, whatever comfort that we're going to get is never going to come, is not going to be what we can get from this world. In this situation that Job is currently in, he has now his friends. His friends are providing no comfort. He's getting comfort from nowhere. He didn't get it from his wife. His children were all slain, so he's not getting it from them. And his theological buddies, his intellectual friends, those who have shared in growing up in the knowledge and truth of the things of God, 4 of them, none of them are providing to him any comfort. Satan certainly is not providing him any comfort. Now you might ask yourself, why would he say that Satan is not providing him any comfort? How does that make any sense? In fact, let me ask my 2 brothers on the screen. Why do you think I would suggest that even Satan is not providing him any comfort? Brother Canaan, what do you think?
That is a very interesting question and perspective that I haven't 100% considered. If I were to maybe bring about some type of explanation without deviating too far, I would say that if it was of the enemy, he would see something in his life that would be pointing to the enemy, some type of person maybe that's interacting with him that isn't of God, but somebody who's, blatantly of the world and sinful, or, something along those lines where he physically either could see it or be attacked by a person or a group, because we see Jesus, he constantly was berated and attacked and ridiculed by who? The unbelievers, right, over and over and over, to the point where they would go to stone him and so on. And so we see Jesus often having physical threats of threats against his life, but he also had a face to it. But it was the world that was after him, where Job, he doesn't have that same situation and circumstance, although he is still dealing with persecution and suffering. It's just a whole different type, in a way. I guess that's kind of a rough answer. I haven't thought about that perspective before.
A good one, right? Brother Jeff, what do you think? Why would they make the suggestion that not even Satan is giving Job any comfort?
Well, initially my thought is, and Jonathan, I may very well be wrong. Tell me if you think I am. But Satan thinks he's got Job by the throat and kicking him in the butt. Because remember what God said to Satan back in chapter 1. Have you considered my servant Job, a righteous and upright man who loves God and eschews evil? Well, here Job is now lost everything. 3 of his useless friends have come, have added no service to him at all. Why let the man up an inch? You got him down, keep on stomping him. Don't even think about giving him a hair's length of trying to get up and put himself back together. You got this guy down, keep him down. That's what I'm thinking the devil is this. I could be wrong. Right.
No, it's a lot to think about. It's a question that is designed to provoke. So here's what my thinking is. And this is, and let me say this first as a precursor to where I'm going to go with this. There are many times that a fellow believer there are many times where fellow believers have asked me when they're going through troubles at time, and I've asked my old pastor, who I was happy I got to speak to yesterday on Christmas Day. When you're going through these troubles, sometimes it is very often that a Christian can be so overwhelmed by what they're going through, their suffering and their affliction, that it might cause them to question their own salvation. And so many times Christian will ask the question, do you think I'm saved? Do you think there's something you think I should be worried? I feel like God is leaving me or departing me from me or whatever. And the answer that I always give, which did not originate with me, but did originate with my pastor who gave this same direction to me. He said this. He says, if you were an unbeliever, that wouldn't concern you. Only believers are concerned about their standing before God. Only believers. The unbeliever doesn't care. They're not asking things. They're not contemplating God. But the Christian, when they are suffering and going through affliction, they are always wondering, has God left me? Am I truly a Christian? Am I truly a Christian? This is what we ask ourselves all the time. But the question of whether or not you are a Christian or not is only a question that true believers often ask. The atheist doesn't ask. The agnostic doesn't ask. These folks aren't concerned about whether or not they are a Christian, but only Christians ask the question, am I saved? Is God still with me? Has he left me? Have I gone too far that I can't be reeled back in? Is my suffering and affliction an indication that God is showing me that God has a distaste for me? That his favor is no longer upon me? These are the kind of questions that believers ask. The worldlings don't ask this. The carnal men among us don't ask that. So when I say that Job had absolutely comfort, he had no comfort coming from me anywhere. Not even Satan. Now, Satan does not provide comfort in order to ease a person's mind. Satan will provide comfort to individuals to cause them to sleep and to slumber so as to not look to find or seek an affiliation with God. Satan's comfort is designed to make you drowsy to the things of God. Like Brother Jeff said, it is a false comfort. It's a false comfort. It is the kind of comfort that he can give in order to lull you away from focusing on the Most High, or to prevent you from focusing on the Most High altogether. Satan does provide comfort, but it is not a genuine comfort that is the kind of comfort that God gives. It is the kind of comfort that keeps you away from God. That's what it is. Even Satan doesn't want anything to do with Job in terms of comfort. He wants Job to curse God to his face. So he gives whatever Satan will give to a person just enough to keep them enthralled with the toys of this life. The love of pleasure, the love of money, the lust of the flesh, the pride of the eyes. He will provide these comforts to you, not to comfort you in righteousness and holiness and godliness, but to comfort you so as to keep you away from those approaches. Brother Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was just going to pretty much echo what you just said. The enemy will give you any sort of comfort as long as it keeps you from connecting, Brother Jonathan, with the source of absolute, true comfort and righteousness. He is not opposed to doing that at all. If it'll keep you from reconnecting deeper with the Lord in your relationship and your walk with him, believe me, he will comfort you with anything to keep you from that. And that's partly where Job is right now.
Yeah, Satan functions as that drug dealer that wants to keep you hooked so that you have no idea of how to function, because he rips off from you every little bit of sobriety that you have. And this is what he does. He doesn't want you to be sober minded when it comes to God's things. And so he gives the wicked these little trinkets. And they believe that this is somehow comforting when it's not. Far from it. Brother Nathan, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry, Nathan. Canaan. I'm sorry. Canaan, sorry.
So I wanted to add on to what you were sharing about with those things that the enemy uses, because what it really leads down to, as far as I understand, is the road of idolatry. And so I wanted to read a few verses from Isaiah 44, 9 to 11. And then I want to tie that into Matthew. Those who fashion an idol are all futile, and their treasured things are of no benefit. Even their own witnesses fail to see or know, so that they will be put to shame. Who has fashioned a god or cast an idol to no benefit? Behold, all his companions will be put to shame, for the craftsmen themselves are mere men. Let them all assemble themselves, let them stand up, let them tremble, let them be put to shame together. And so I want to tie that into Matthew 7, 24, 27. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and acts on them will be like a wise man who built his house on what? The rock. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and slammed against that house, and yet it did not fall, for it had been founded on the rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not act on them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and slammed against the house, and it fell, and it collapsed. Its collapse was great. And so, brothers and sisters, this is why it's so imperative. We need to keep things simple, but we need to be precise with how we address sin in our lives, or these idols that sneak in, because they can come in all different shapes, sizes. And if we are not constantly examining every aspect of our life, and we let our guard down, and if we forget to put on the armor of God, one day it allows these attacks, it allows the sand to seep in and the leaven to spread, and we fall and we fail. And it's not that we're relying on our own strength, but that we're relying on God and his word and the Spirit to lead us in discernment and righteous living. And so we need to keep these things simple, because it's so easy to complicate things with our own ways and our own thoughts and wisdom.
Amen, brother. Appreciate that. Sister Angel, you want to add to the conversation? Welcome and happy holidays to you, sister. Angel, you there? All right. Maybe she's taking a break.
No, I'm here. Sorry, I was just on mute.
Okay, go ahead.
Excellent teaching, and the reminder of some of life's struggles always puts me back in remembrance of Job's story. And at any point when you feel like surrendering, I always go back and I ask myself, have you considered my servant Job? And it's like, oh no, I'm going to stand, I'm going to fight, and nothing's going to make me back down. So.
That's right. Amen, sister. Amen. So let me ask you guys a question. Since we got a small group here, I'll try to ask a couple more things than I normally would. Affliction, suffering that we go through. Whether we've gone through it or not, or whether we know someone who has gone through it. And I mean this particularly and especially, but not, completely, even with unbelievers. What are some of the things when it comes to affliction that people contemplate that they didn't before? What is when somebody's going through affliction, going through a really, really hard time? Especially those who are either Christians and not have been sort of walking the line, walking the walk, or even unbelievers. But what are some of the things that affliction makes people ponder and consider? Sister Meg, what do you think?
I think the first one is like, what did I do wrong? So a lot of people are like, when they meet a suffering, it's like, oh God, what did I do wrong? What did you do to me? Instead of not understanding that suffering comes not from sin. The Lord Jesus Christ paid for that already.
Right.
So it comes from the testing and the trials of our faith. And so this is what gives us perseverance. But I think sometimes it's like, why me? You know, why are you doing this to me, Lord? I've been good to you. I've done all these great things. And these are the things that come up when you are going through sufferings or trials or tribulations. And I think so many people ask, why me? You know?
Right. Sister
Did
Angel,
I answer the question right? Because
No, it's just a question. It's just like it's
no,
not wrong.
no, not right or wrong, but just saying, like, is it falling in line to what you're?
No, what I'm asking is, like, because you see this especially when it comes, you see this especially with people who in our lives we may not see them as believers. They don't talk about God. They don't talk about Christ. They don't believe in it. Maybe you witness to them and they don't want to hear it, or it could be somebody who says they are a Christian and there's nothing that indicates that they are, but they will tell you that they are. But what I'm saying is this: whenever most people go through a very, very difficult time, suddenly God becomes part of their discussion. And so what I'm asking is, what are some of the things that they bring up when they haven't thought about God up to this point? When they get hit with cancer or the loss of a family member or whatever, suddenly people start contemplating things pertaining to God. And this is what I'm asking about. What is it that, what are the kind of things that affliction and suffering makes all people, anybody contemplate?
You understand your mortality.
And that's exactly what Job was talking about in these very verses. He's talking about the shortness of his life, the brevity of life. He says, my days are swifter than a post. They flee away. They see no good. They are passed away as swift ships, like the eagle that hastens after his prey. So you're right. The brevity of life is one of those things that people always talk about. Sister Angel, what do you think? What is something else?
See, I was going on the same track as the last speaker, but I would say back in 2012, I'll keep this real short. I was in an abusive marriage. I finally filed for a divorce, but the church gave me a look now that they knew that I had separated. They just gave me a look, and I felt that I carried this cloak of shame. And then right after I did that, I got diagnosed with cancer. Wow. And my when my soon-to-be ex found out, he was like, well, I see somebody's not living right, are they? So, but I took that to my heart and soul because I love God with all my might.
Amen.
And I can remember I would always, at our church, they always play worship before music or before church starts. And I remember just sitting in there quietly, and I'm like, God, I need to know that you love me, because right now in this time, I don't feel it. Like I'm not feeling you're there, and right at that moment, this lady that I just knew her by first name, but she came and tapped me on the shoulder and she handed me a letter that, our pastor had wrote the church that God woke him up